Welcome to Talks at Google. I'm Camille O'Neill. I'm a proud member of the Filipino Googlers Network. At Google, we celebrate Filipino American History Month with Kapamilya Month, so our Filipino brethren across the globe can celebrate along with us. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting two incredibly talented creators who have in the past shared their views on intersectionality on Sigi's podcast. So we will ask these two to talk about themselves, their career, their successes. We'll ask them to share their thoughts on intersectionality, allyship, and what it means to be Filipino, including tough questions on situations that we Asians and Filipinos face today. So let's get started. Welcome to Chef Jordan Andino and musical artist David Labuguen. Jordan, would you kick us off? Tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got there.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me, Camille. David, what's good?
What's up?
What's up? So I'll start this off. So my name is Jordan Andino. I'm an executive chef and restaurateur based out of New York. And I own a restaurant called Sigi. So it's a Filipino Taqueria. So if you imagine Filipino foods, Mexican vessels with a little bit of Filipino like flavor and ingredients sprinkled all about. So my goal with it is I created it to create like awareness around Filipino cuisine and also try to take our cuisine from the Philippines and, let's call it, make it a little bit more marketable and at times more palatable for people who haven't had those types of flavors before, and then bring it to a more westernized culture. And that's what brought me here.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jordan. It's great to see chefs such as yourself inspiring Americans to expand their minds and palates. So, David, for those who may not be aware, would you take a moment to share who you are, what you do, and how you got there?
Yes. I'm David. I am 1/3 of the band Arizona. We, I call myself a mediocre rock star. I mean, being in the music industry, being Filipino, we're out there, but we're not out there, and so I'm just trying to build awareness, create community in the entertainment sector, trying to bring people together, and also make dope music. So that's how I got here.
Well, thank you for joining us. I've been a fan since day one, so it's great to see, Filipino artists represented in mainstream media. So let's get into it, right? As you both know, we brought you here today after watching your Sari-Sari podcast. Each of you have non-stereotypical careers and have thrived in your respective industries. So I'd like to open the floor a bit to have each of you share with us why you're so passionate about representation and the idea of intersectionality. Jordan, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think, for me, whenever we start talking about Filipino culture and how we are viewed in the United States and just actually anywhere that isn't the Philippines or without the comfort and safety of our own households, I've realized that we are looked down upon, honestly, by not just only kind of the rest of the world, but other Asian communities as well. And I think that I believe that it's time for Filipinos to be more than ever proud, exuberant, and happy, and just a powerful movement within ourselves to push our community forward, because there's so many great things about our culture that have been overlooked, or because a lot of different countries, as Dave and I have said on our podcast before, have colonized us, right? We had Spain, we've had China, we've had the US and countless others. We've yet to really find an identity, but I do believe in the past, we'll call it even century, that, Filipinos are now kind of coming to the forefront. We've immigrated, we've spread our minds and our culture and our food throughout the world. And I think it's time for us to be proud and happy about where we've landed today.
Awesome. I love that view, and I myself see myself at that intersection of colonists as my background is. So I love the passion behind that. David, how about you? What brings you here?
I think for me, growing up, my parents obviously lived vicariously through me. They were like, we couldn't afford music lessons. You're going to take up music. I took it a step too far, made it my career. And along that journey, it was really difficult for me to find people who looked like me doing it. We had Apple to App, Black Eyed Peas. We had Chad Hugo from the Neptunes. And there are so many others in the space, but like Apple to App really carried that flag. And for me, coming up, I knew then it was possible to look the way I look, to grow up with the culture I grew up in, and to make it in mainstream media. And so, for me, as someone who's signed to a major label, who has success in this field, I think it's important to claim being Filipino, put it out there so that others can see, hey, we're here, we can make it. There's room for you here, and also, you know, I think that yeah, just sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. But basically, you know, putting the flag in the ground and being like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we're here," is so important um, for us and for future generations, and also, building that community and that support for each other, rather than being in a place where you know you're used to being the only Filipino and having to compete for that spot.
Yeah.
It's so important that we invite everyone in, rather than try to claim the one space, because there's more than one space for all of us.
Yeah. And
I agree. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was actually going to ask you as if there was any like, you obviously are very Filipino in your personal lives because you are Filipino, but do you like ever associate with just being Asian? What's the difference like how do you differentiate like Asian representation or Filipino representation, or is it both for you?
For me,
Yeah.
it's both.
Okay.
Because as other Asian communities come up, that helps pave the road for all of us. And it's the same in the school of thought for um, feminism, Black studies. Like, when the most marginalized are elevated, that provides equality and equity for everybody. And I think that for us, even though there are these intricacies of like inter-Asian beefs, I think it's just important as a oh, you know or
Community.
as a community that we lift each other up, um, and especially also being here in America, it's like we don't have to carry the generational beefs from our homelands here.
Yes.
It's like being in this journey together and building coalitions together gives us more power collectively.
I totally agree. I think a rising tide, like, lifts all ships. Isn't that what it means? So it's, when I'm out there and I'm walking with during the BLM movement, or at a protest with an AAPI, like, or Stop AAPI Hate protest, it's stuff like that. I feel as though all Asians are one, and you can even see it from mainstream marketing and media. We used to be called Oriental, and like no matter what, we were Oriental of some sort. And then from there we became ethnic, and then from there now people know that there's a difference between Laos and Vietnam and the Philippines, and even southern and northern Filipinos, because some are lighter and some are darker. And the fact that people now can denote and very much tell the difference. And I wouldn't say it's all there yet, because I still have many friends from all different types of ethnicities and backgrounds who can't tell the difference. And we've actually spoke about this in serious matter, and just being like, hey, like, what is, like, is there a general physical difference between someone who is from mainland China versus maybe Taiwan versus someone in the Philippines? Like, what's the different looks? What's the height? What's the, like, and it's difficult to categorize that. But I do at least appreciate the fact that there's people like David said, Apple Diab, David himself, and what I'm trying to do in the culinary space to, as David said, plant the flag and be a beacon of hope and a light for people to say, okay, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it too. And honestly, if I can say that I have inspired or even just kickstarted any young chef's career, or even not just that, as I go into more entertainment myself, someone into entertainment, and they're there because, hey man, I saw you and I believe that I could do it, and I believe more within myself. And that's why David and I are here.
So you bring up a few different things that I kind of want to touch on, and I will be asking tougher questions today. So I appreciate both of your willingness to tackle the spicier questions. One of the things you mentioned is just positive stereotypes that you want to continue to perpetuate. Is there anything in your lifetime that you've experienced that might have been negative? And have you been called anything different, or what barriers have you felt you've come through, right, in order to get to where you are? Go for it, David.
Okay. In a previous life before this, I worked in advertising, and so I've definitely experienced, especially in a more corporate space, I'm the Filipino dude here, and like there can only be one of us. I think like that's tough. The idea that like there's only so much room for us to be there. I think that it's kind of weird for me because I low key fulfilled a lot of very Asian stereotypes. Like music, math, like it's. But there's definitely that whole, like Squid Games is like super popping right now, and like I was talking to somebody, and they were like, "I love Japanese culture," and I'm like, uh, you know, there's definitely a lot of like misidentification,
Yeah.
or the whole like, what are you? I rather than becoming offended, I'm trying to use it as an opportunity. Um, and I think that's one of the things that is really tough, like especially being from Jersey, I can get so heated so fast. Um, but
Check the Jersey
and,
attitude.
and I think that you know, as we experience, setbacks and you know, hitting roadblocks, it's important for us to remember that we're still paving a way, and that's it's tough because like my flesh is like I want to beat someone up, but thinking that long term game of like how are we advancing for our people,
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think those are the kinds of I know that for me sometimes in our industry it's hard to get other people to understand how important it is for you.
Yeah.
Like representing my culture is so important to me, but it doesn't always necessarily align with the business interests of everyone around me. And so having to figure that out, and try to explain how this will also benefit them, is one of the biggest challenges that I have because it's not always easy to get like it would be easy to get someone's like verbal support or like that's cool, but I think it's a little bit more tough to have someone invest their time and their energy alongside you unless you're able to really build relationship and show them how and why this is so important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it comes to your initial part of that question of like the stereotypes that we've encountered and had to break through, I feel like I'm in a unique position because I grew up in a very fortunate, atmosphere. Although I'm a first gen, all my parents, they moved here from the Philippines and they worked their asses off and they've worked through racism. They've worked through being called names, being physically intimidated, physically assaulted. And, one example is I don't speak Tagalog specifically because my parents didn't want me to learn it, because everything that they grew up with and the accent and not being able to speak English, they didn't want me to go through. That's really sad, and because I tell them all the time, why didn't you speak to me? Like, I want to be able to speak Tagalog or Ilocano or Visayan, whatever. And it's just not happening. And then it took them a while to tell me the reason why. Furthermore, I grew up bringing chicken adobo and rice to school. I grew up bringing bangos and patis to school with rice and garlic rice. That doesn't smell really good, but
No,
it
but it's
tastes delicious.
delicious.
But it's delicious. But I didn't realize that was A, a stereotype, B, the Asian kid smells and is bringing weird food. But I did get made fun of for that. But the reason why I kind of bring that all together to tie it back up is I grew up in a great spot, and because of my family and how hard they work, they allowed me to kind of, generally go through life unscathed from a racial standpoint. But now as I look back, I don't blame anyone, but I'm like, oh, like that, I was going through a racial issue there, or I was being stereotyped at that point. And so now it's more about me learning and understanding what the difference is between just, someone that is prejudging me, or someone that is just ignorant, or someone that is actually has a racial aggression towards me. And all three are different, and they're very nuanced. And I'm just trying to learn it myself. So these kind of conversations that I'm having, I don't personally believe I'm an expert by any means, but I'm happy to be vocal about it. I'm happy to bring forth these conversations, because where we are in this time and this now is a time that we should have these conversations, because more people are open to them. So while everyone's mind is open, let's continue opening everyone's minds to people like us.
Awesome. Thank you both for your perspectives there. I think one of the things that I hear pretty regularly is that Asians as a stereotype or brand, right? Like we are either too quiet or too loud. And that's something that, David mentioned earlier too, that he said that, in the corporate environment, he was the one Asian, right? So let's talk about a little bit about how our being Asian and what that brand means. So talk to us about bravado versus humility, right? So especially, within Asians and Filipinos, right? What do you think is too much or too little as representative of your public brands?
All right. So David, I got one here. I got this one real quick. So it's really on through the lens in which when we're talking bravado, we're talking about giving someone a personality that they can both look up to and resonate with, but also be inspired by. Yes, takes that bravado, but it also depends on the lens that you're looking through, and that dictates whether or not that bravado is negative or positive. So an example is, if you're looking at an older generations of Filipinos who just put their head down, worked really hard, and gained success through their hard work and determination, then my bravado at times could be off-putting and can come off as cocky, right? Now you go, but then if you look through a second or third generation Filipino who is 12 or 13 or 14, is getting bullied at school, but maybe somewhat looks like me, or that person can resonate with me in some way or another, then my bravado becomes a signal and a beacon for them to go, it's okay, I can do that because he's doing it. So it really just depends on what lens you're looking through, because then you can go, we don't have that much time to get into it, but then you can start going into, okay, the different genders and how they look at the other genders within the Filipino community, right? And then you can also look at different Asians and how they look at the different Asians. So I just think it just really, that question just depends on how you look through it. But the way I go through my day each and every day is an over allotment of happiness. I feel is there's no way that's going to be a negative thing for people, and anyone that takes that as a negative I don't want in my life. So it's fine. It's a natural filter. If you don't like being around someone that's really happy all the time, then there's something wrong with you. That's all I gotta say.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Jordan. David, did you have any thoughts on the topic?
Oh, no, I just really resonate with the whole, our parents, I think, raised us in a way that, like, our pride got shot down growing up, like in a way that's like, you got to be respectful and you have to be, you have to submit to older generations, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm actually in a season right now of unlearning and relearning that, because there is the principle is somewhat sound, right? Like there's a reason why they raised us that way. And at the same time, you have to understand for yourself, when is that applicable in my life?
Mm-hmm.
But just like Jordan said, being happy, being positive, always lifting up other people. I think, you know, just the big rule of thumb is like, don't be a dick about it, right? So I mean, as long as we're
Don't be
being
an asshole.
yeah,
Just
like
don't be an asshole.
as long as we're being, you know, good people, you know, obviously there will be generational differences and even, you know, within our own culture, differences in the way that things are accepted as we put them out there. But that's kind of the name of the game. You know, that's part of the territory that we live in.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, especially as people in entertainment, everyone has an opinion. You know,
I have, well, they're kind of furthering that point too. I think one thing that we have to look at too is how Americans and specifically the majority of Americans, just white Americans, look at Asians, right? That's what Camille was originally bringing up, and you're right. It's actually jarring. It is. It's jarring for the white American community that we live in to see people that look like us. To see people that look like us be talented. It's weird for them, and the reason why it's weird is because, and it really, and it's unfortunate, but it just has to do with just general prejudice that has been growing over, you know, many, like, tens of decades. But furthermore, it's also just weird because they're gonna go, why are people like that doing so well, and they weren't before, and so it confounds them a little bit more, but it allows us to have a spotlight. So when we are in that spotlight, they immediately think, and when I say they, I'm referencing to the majority of white America, they're going, okay, typically I've seen in movies or categorized stereotypically negatively, that is going to be the Asian geek or the Asian, like, comedic sidekick or whatever. It's like, why is that person in a starring lead role?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they Prince Charming? Prince Charming's white. I like that's what they're thinking. Seriously, like, yeah. That's something that people think, and I'm like, yes, Prince Charming could absolutely be white, but guess what? There's Prince Charming in every fucking country in the world, and guess what? Most of them aren't white. So what are you gonna do about that? And, like, anyway, so, like, I get that a lot. It's like, and I guess because of, and I guess my personality and what I do, but it's like, it's not bravado. It's just confidence and the fact that I want to exude happiness. And if people want to misconstrue that, then that's their problem.
And to that point too, you know, representation and occupying spaces is about counteracting white supremacy in the world we live in. And so being where we are and occupying these spaces allows us to help bring equity and equality by dismantling this societal image that's white Eurocentric. Mm-hmm. And that's so important for us to understand and dismantle, because that's the only way that we'll be able to see equality across the board. And we're talking about equality not just for Filipinos, but for Asians and all other people groups. You know, I think that's like the root of like really why it's so important for us to be out here and to say what we're saying and to be in the places that we are in, because otherwise, you know, the norm and that societal norm and that cultural norm, especially here in the States and even in the Philippines, like, we don't have, that's another rabbit hole of like, like the Philippines facing west.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that's like really the root of it, is we're trying to be in those places where people have been so comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, so comfortable to the point that it makes them uncomfortable that we're there.
Yeah. Dismantle is a really, I have nothing more to say than that. I love dismantle, because dismantle doesn't mean destroy the structure that's there, then try to rebuild from scratch. Dismantle to me means slowly take apart and uncover different elements and structurally take it down so that it's still safe and it doesn't crumble and there's still structure, but you have to do it piece by piece and methodically. And I think David, I get very passionate, but I think David said that very eloquently. And, you know, it's really about dismantling something and taking it down piece by piece and examining how we got there, why that piece is there, and maybe putting it aside or maybe using it in a different way again. So I think that was really well said.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for that. I think one of the things that you both actually said was that representation is kind of it challenges white supremacy in the U.S. especially. What are your thoughts for our viewers out there who would like to be better allies for those that are dismantling the system like yourselves? Have you experienced true allyship in your careers, and how could we potentially show others how to mirror that type of behavior?
So it's a funny thing, allyship. It's so easy to be performative about what you do. It's easy to be vocal in support, but true allyship requires a modicum of sacrifice. I think, in my opinion, because if as an ally you have the privilege, but you're not willing to give up that privilege, then are you really an ally? Um, and I think that's the thing. Social media, it's so easy to be like, hashtag stop AAPI hate. But what does that really mean? And I'm not saying that vocal support isn't good. Like, vocal support is good, but that's step one. True allyship, I think, takes it a step further in terms of like, what are you? And sacrifice doesn't necessarily mean material. I think sacrifice can be your own comfort. Like, are you examining your life, your privilege, where you have space, and how you operate in the world? Like, and it's hard for me to say because I'm not white, right? So like, but I can understand from like the point of view of like me being an ally for other people and other cultures. It's like, as Asians, for instance, like we have a certain amount of privilege that like is different from what white people experience, but it's also different from what Black people experience. And so when I say like Black Lives Matter, right? Am I also examining in my world and in my space, and am I confronting my own comfort and where I've been complicit by being comfortable? And being able to examine that, I think, is what really spurs on and gets the ball rolling in terms of allyship.
Wow, that was good. Dang, I mean, listen, man, I there's no way whatever I'm gonna say is gonna be better than that, because that's exactly how I wish I could have said that. I think just to add really to that amazing point is I think it has to do with examination. I think you have to just be able to step back for a second and be like, all right, like and really regardless of what race you are, but just step back and go, okay, where do I sit right now? Like, how am I being Filipino? How has that helped me, and how has it been a disadvantage to me? Okay, let's just quickly examine that. How many people actually take the time to do that? Then after that, you need to have a conversation with someone else who isn't your race. Hey, how do you feel about that? Have you I think just these small steps aren't done enough. Honestly, I think there's this woke movement who are just like break everything down and try to restructure it back until so that we're in a harmonious society. It's this utopia that I don't personally think can exist. How I do think we can is just have these kind of conversations. Take some time that isn't performative, as David was saying. Sit down on a couch and call over a friend one day a week for 4 weeks. Or just like once a week for 4 weeks. And just, that's 4 different friends of 4 different races, and just take an hour, have a cup of coffee, a tea, a drink, whatever, and just be like, hey, like, how have you grown up with that? Like, how has it affected you? Like, do you think, if a white person, do you think you're privileged? You didn't bring up that way. Oh, tell me why. Like, just have those conversations, man. And I think, like I said earlier, I'm not like the epitome of a master of this topic, but I very much enjoy an uncomfortable disposition. And I feel that the best outcomes come from when you are uncomfortable, when you're pushed out of your comfort zone. So I'm more than willing to have these conversations and turn up the aggression and be defensive and be offensive, but also listen and understand that this is not going to happen overnight, but this change starts with these small little steps.
So that's interesting, Jordan, that you mentioned, reaching out to people, right? So when we think about your circles of influence, how often do each of you step outside your, immediate circle to actually have those conversations and encourage people to do such work?
It's cyclical for me. There was a good I remember this was for 8 months, and it's just unfortunate. And it's I wish I could keep it up all the time, but I want to be honest and candid. It's there was a time where every month, maybe twice to 3 times a month, I'm having a dinner with a different group of people, or sometimes a repeat of those similar kind of people who want to have those conversations, and we just talked about kind of all those different things that are affecting, whether it's marketing in the media, AAPI, hate, BLM, or and everything in between. It's nice to kind of have those conversations, but then sometimes life gets in the way. You get married, you have work, you're constantly busy, and then those kind of we'll call them cultural movement conversations, although a centimeter at a time, they're not happening because you get busy. So it's really about me having to prioritize that. I haven't had a conversation like that since May. And that's on me. To the fact that I haven't spoken up and I haven't continued what I initially discovered and started a few years ago within myself. And that is a battle to become more open-minded, to learn more, and to just become better.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, David? How often is it easy for you to step out and speak to others, especially your fans, I suppose?
I think for my fan base, sorry, yeah, I think my computer's freaking out, but I think it should get better. As long as you can hear me, we're good.
I can hear you fine.
It's establishing as within the platform that we're about this helps, I think. It being vocal initially helps to lay the groundwork to continue to be vocal. For instance, I'm here in Austin right now. I was just at Austin City Limits Festival. I wasn't performing, but I'm hanging out backstage and just with other Filipinos, with other people, just being able to. I was hanging out with a bunch of Filipinos backstage actually, and that was already one thing. But it kind of, there were other people around and having that conversation. I think it's almost like a practice makes perfect thing. It's like it just the more you continue, the more you can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Dave, I have a question for you. Do you think that there is, maybe there's not like a rule book for it, but do you think there's a couple of actions? Yeah, I think actions is a good way to describe it. A couple of actions that you could suggest to people listening, or to your own network, or to me and my network, that would create better allies. Because a question for me is when someone says be an ally, I'm like, okay, well, I consider if someone comes and supports my restaurant and posts about it, you're an ally. You're not the strongest of allies, but you're an ally. But some people may think that's not enough, and that they didn't do enough, right? But no, I think we're good there, and I think every dollar that goes towards a Filipino entrepreneur, that's also allyship. But some people don't believe that. So do you have 1, 2 things that you think people could do?
I at least for you and I, right? In the spaces we occupy and with the people that we kind of are in our circles in entertainment, but I guess this also applies in the corporate world. It's what opportunities do you have to give? That's one of the easiest, because an opportunity isn't necessarily, it's already an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's already available. It's not like you got to dig for it.
Yeah.
And I think like that's exactly what we did for each other, right? Like you had an opportunity like for us to do a collab on the food side of things. Like I had an opportunity to bring you into the fold of the music industry. And it is not and that can happen, you know, across the board. Um that would be one of my starting points. Um and then alongside that, the other thing is listening. I guess you can't get to the opportunity without first listening. um, it's really, I can't state it hard enough. Like a lot of people think they're listening, but they're not.
So good. That's so good.
And that's and that is a simple sacrifice of time. So you know, that's kind of if I had to give like starting points or like, you know, launch points, that's where I would sort of begin.
That's pretty good. I like those both.
I do too, actually.
It's pretty good.
I appreciate that you both are really talking about too, like what you can do from here, right? So let's take like a step back a little bit, right? Talk about you and your specific careers. You both, are, like I mentioned before, are incredibly influential in your field. So, where do you go from here? How do you see your careers progressing? And what are your aspirations? Is there still a bamboo ceiling for you, or do you feel like you've already like broken through that and now it's just floating along and swimming?
I from here, it's on a personal level, it's like buy my parents a house, right? And then they'll fully understand what I do.
Yeah.
Because like at first it was like, David, do you have health insurance? And and then I got like a PPO and I was like, what up, Ma? I just G'd up on your insurance. And then she was like, David, do you have a house? And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work on that. Like, so there's a lot of personal goals for me that have to do with meeting the expectations of my parents, which is a whole nother thing that I think we all go through as some sort of part of. So I'm letting you guys know that like you're not the only one. Like, but career wise, you know, for me with the band, we're writing our next album, recovering from this pandemic. It was crazy, like 80% of our income just vanished. And so now we're getting back into that. I find myself in a season now where I haven't felt this creative and I haven't felt this kind of energy in such a long time, probably since I started the project. And so, you know, I look forward to continuing on building career wise and not forgetting how I learned how to rest during the pandemic. That's so important. I think it's so easy for us to get burnt out. And along the way, you know, side by side, because it's not one and then the other. I think for me, they're parallel paths, you know, continuing to fight for more representation. I hope to mentor some up and coming Filipino artists because I think that would just be dope. And yeah, continuing to do this work. I guess eventually I'd like to tour the world and do like stadiums. That's really that's like that I guess that's the pinnacle for people like, you know, for bands like us is the stadium thing. So
The next Super Bowl feature.
yeah, like that really is like that's how you know there's no more left after that. I don't think
There really isn't. Yeah, that's true.
so, except for like the EGOT, but that's a whole nother story.
Dude, that'd be sick if you got an EGOT. If you were an EGOT person.
Okay, wait. I need you guys to explain that to me because I'm an old fart.
Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony.
Thank you.
And it's to win all 4, and there's only like 16 people in history.
You can also get a golden EGOT.
What's a golden EGOT?
Yeah, it's a golden EGOT.
Adds a Golden Globe.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Insane.
Well, if you're gonna aspire, David, aspire, right?
Yeah. Right.
All right, Jordan, how about you?
Yeah, I think my first step, we're talking about representation and trying to get Filipinos that next opportunity, is take the opportunities and networks and connections that I've made and give those to other Filipinos. So if that means what David was saying in mentorship, I am currently trying to mentor one young chef, and I hope she becomes amazing and bigger than I ever will be. I personally look at success as nothing to do with you, really. And I think it has everything to do with people who have worked under you, worked for you, worked adjacent to you. And if they touched your success bubble and become successful, wildly successful themselves, then in my head, I go, all right, cool. Then that means I must be successful, because if my success falls into other people and makes them successful, then rock and roll. So I want to give that opportunity to Filipinos all over the world, but not just Filipinos, to anyone that is deserving, so that hasn't had the opportunity to be in those rooms or have those conversations. That's number one. Number two, and so like if anyone's watching that, wants to reach out and try to do an internship and work with me and try to get in this bubble, and you feel that you've never been listened to or heard, I will happily do that. That's number one. Number two is I want to be the first Filipino with a Michelin star in Filipino cuisine. It's never happened. There's Filipinos at work that have been responsible for Michelin stars, but there hasn't been a Filipino chef who's opened a Filipino restaurant and got a Michelin star for that. And so if I'm not the first, I want to be one of the best of it. But there's a lot of amazing Filipinos and food that I've had that is inherently Filipino around the world. And so all I know is that the competition's coming fast, so I gotta work quickly. and then last but not least, I think I want to use my platform specifically through Flip Sigi to spread throughout and franchise and open up many different spots, and then from there incubate and grow the Filipino communities wherever we open. Because then it just makes so much sense to hire the cooks, hire the people, and now I'm really following through on things that I want to do. That's it.
Awesome. Well, these are amazing goals, and thank you for offering the viewership here to be able to reach out to you, essentially. So expect an uptick in your follows. I know I just did that recently as well, Jordan. So happy you offer it. Awesome. So I wonder if we should open it up for chat. I also have additional questions for you as well. If anybody has any questions, we can certainly do that. As there are a few questions that I definitely want to ask you. I don't know if you guys can see these comments, but I think we definitely have to start with what is your favorite Filipino food, I think, for the both of you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Dave, go.
So hard. Kare-kare.
Number one. Really?
Tell us what kare-kare is for those those viewers who may not know.
Wait, why am I describing? Jordan should describe this. This is the field of expertise.
Okay, so kare-kare, that is David's. He's over here. Kare-kare, that is David's personal favorite Filipino food. It's braised oxtail with, and specifically the two things that are found in, I would say, every kare-kare are three things: oxtail, obviously, and then bagoong, or some sort of fermented shrimp paste. Sometimes it's fermented fish paste, but it's something that really gives this umami and salty unctuousness to it. And then the third ingredient being some form of peanut. So typically it's peanut butter. It makes the sauce thick. It makes it viscous. It makes it heavy and hearty. But I've also seen it with crushed peanuts or with canned peanuts that have been emulsified with a coconut sauce or some sort of stock. There's many different ways that we do it, but I would say that the three main ingredients when we're talking about David's favorite dish, kare-kare, it is bagoong or some sort of fish paste. It is oxtail, and it is or braised oxtail in peanut butter or peanut product of some sort.
I like want to eat now. Thank you, Jordan.
Yeah. On my end, I would say my favorite Filipino food is pretty much anything my Lola cooks. But since I can't always have it, what do I order when she's not cooking it? I think it might just be what was it? Someone at Condé Nast magazine just named the #1 soup in the world, which was sinigang. And sinigang is delicious. And for everyone out there who doesn't know what sinigang means, it is a typically tamarind-based, but it's a sour soup with any sort of protein braised into it. Sometimes there's shrimp, sometimes there's pork, sometimes there's beef, sometimes there's fish. But typically it's a sour soup that has a bunch of different ingredients in it, from Chinese long bean to tomatoes to potatoes or yams or carrots or what have you, with some sort of protein. Done.
Yo, be real with me real quick though.
Yeah.
When you make sinigang, because I've never not used the packet.
Okay, I actually have it. I just happen to be obviously in my kitchen. There's my thing. So I agree with the packet, like the Knorr packet, the packet. Sorry, I don't. But anyway, the packet. Yes, the packet is awesome. I use it in my restaurants. Don't hate on the packet.
There's a few different types of packets, Jordan.
There's a few different types of packet, but I will say this is what I keep when I'm making it. Try to be fancy myself. Trying to be fancy myself. There you go.
That sounds like.
There you go. So
I'm gonna need to come over and learn how to use the puree for real.
Yeah, and then what I do,
I'm gonna invite myself to that dinner. So
and then I use the puree with some bouillon beef cubes, and like that's what gives the two together that salty umami taste. Anyway, sorry, that's
nice.
it.
Delicious. I love that we just did that.
This is right there.
All right. There's a really great question in the comments, and I definitely want to address it. So, any advice to kids that want to pursue their dream but are pressured by parents or relatives to be something else?
Wait, leave it up there. Any advice to kids that want to pursue their dream?
So, how did you get past your parents' expectations, David?
Perpetual disappointment and then stopping to care. What? I'm just.
Love
So when my dad was growing up, my Lolo, my dad wanted to be an engineer. My Lolo was like, we already have one in the family. I need to diversify my bonds. And so like my portfolio needs to be complete. So my dad ended up becoming an accountant, and he didn't necessarily love it. And so growing up, I was fortunate because he always told me, do what you love and the money will come. You won't work a day in your life. And I took that very literally and I took it to the max. There was definitely that initial struggle because I think our parents ultimately want us to be stable and have security, and that is important. But I mean, ultimately, for me, all I can say is what my father told me, which is if you're passionate about it, if you love it, if you pursue it, you'll find your way. This is where mentorship comes along because it's really important for people like Jordan and I to help people up and to have support systems. But I think, that's really like, a lot of kids are like, I want to do this.
Make sure you have a mentor.
But then I think the other thing too is like, I just wish there was more follow through. Like, I definitely have encountered some people on the road that they're like, yo, I do music, like I'm Filipino. I'm like, cool, send me your stuff. You know what I mean? Like, get in touch with me. Like, I gave you my handle, like, I DM'd you. So that's one of those things. Like, I think if you're truly, truly, truly passionate about it and you're willing to do whatever it takes, then, go for it. If you're not all the way there, um, it's because I think regardless of being Filipino or not, like at a certain point, you do have to take that leap of faith. Um, and all I could say is like that leap of faith leads you to take other leaps of faith, you know. Um, and I'm, I guess I'm here for it. Like, uh, I'm here ready to help bring someone up. But just make sure you love it, and um, you know.
So I'm taking notes. You're inviting everybody here to follow each of you for mentorship, is what I'm hearing.
Honestly,
Yes.
I'm game.
Yeah.
I'm game. But the other thing too, the cool thing too, is because like we've developed our networks, we got mad people too. Like, it's not just us out here. Like, it's gang. Like, we're out here.
But to answer that question, I'm more. I don't know. I think just the type of person that I am. I operate from the angle of PTW is what we're going to call them. PTW, prove them wrong. That's it. It's like everything that I've ever done that I consider great or that I'm proud of as an accomplishment. It's because at some point someone said to me that I couldn't do it. And so I went, ooh, thanks for that. Guess what? Now I'm going to fucking do it. And so, and so it's like, I welcome haters. I welcome trolls. I welcome when people are like, you're not going to do it. And I'm like, oh, wow. I was going to do it, but in a year, but now because you said that, I'm going to do it in a month. And that's what it is. So if there's young people watching this and your parents want you to be a nurse but you want to be a singer or a chef, then like nothing wrong with any of the three. But if you want to be whatever of those three you want to be or any other occupation, then look the person respectfully in your eye, give them an amen, and be like, respectfully, I'm going to do what we need to do in a respectful way, but I'm also going to prove you wrong. So that's just kind of how I live.
And I've straight up heard stories of like Filipino kids like getting like their PhD or like their MD and then being like, all right, I'm going to do what I want now. Like, there's so many paths to doing it. Like,
that works too.
Yeah.
And now if everything falls apart, you got an MD or PhD or something. You're like, well, there you go. So yeah.
All right. Well, we're Filipino, so of course, in the comments we have another food question, and we're going to talk about the intersectionality of food. Right? What is your take on sisig pizza?
Wow.
Intersectionality. This is where the Jersey in me is conflicting with the Filipino in me.
Okay.
So first of all, I'd only be able to eat this in California. Like, in the sense that like the context of me eating sisig pizza, the Jersey side of me would only be able to like, it's a problem that I have. I recognize that this is a problem. To be honest with you, I've never actually had sisig pizza, so I'd be curious.
Okay, I haven't had it, but let me break it down for you from a chef, very, very quickly from a chef side. Okay, so sisig pizza. So pizza, we're going to talk about cheese. We'll talk about normal pizza. So it's going to be some sort of elastic crust. It's going to have a little bit of crustiness to it. You're going to get the sweetness of a tomato plus the creaminess of a mozzarella. That's it. A little bit of salt. Now, you add sisig to that. So sisig is going to reinforce the salt. It's going to reinforce something that you may not like, because uncooked parts of a sisig, or if it's not a well-executed sisig, is going to be somewhat slimy. Slimy sisig with slimy cheese does not make for a nice bite. Now, if you can cook sisig properly and you get it really crispy and it becomes almost like this pork jowl bacon bit type thing, then you can really render out the fat, put that on top of the pizza, cook it properly, and now those pops of flavor of ginger, of scallion, of garlic, of sisig with the cheese could actually work out well.
Wow,
Okay,
science.
so I think what David, I think what Jordan meant to say is if you're gonna do seasick pizza, stop by Flip Sigi at some point whenever he does like a special, right?
Yeah.
I gotta try it. I gotta try that. I've never made it, but I like the challenge.
When I get back to New York, we're doing it.
Done.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's ask a different question. What can we do to foster creativity in the next generations? You two are both creators, so what do you got?
I know that what helped me was the democratization of technology.
Okay.
Changed the game. Like I learned how to record music at the age of 13 because computers allowed us to do so. And it's funny because I just reposted like this 4-year-old that is like producing music, and it's wild. Obviously, the parents are helping him, but like he's 4 and can like be in the studio and rock like a digital audio workstation, and my mind is blown. And I'm like, that's my goals for my kids. And I think like a big thing initially is resource. Like you don't have to go super crazy, but like just the ability to, I wasn't able to start making music until someone gave me my first audio interface. And it's those things that help, but it's also a lot easier now because I can literally make a pop song on my phone. Like,
okay, I'd love to hear that, David. So anytime you decide you want to just text that over, feel free.
Absolutely.
I would love, please add me to that thread.
Like, it's wild. So in the sense that, I think just access is easier, but people still need it. So it's almost less of an ask nowadays on the creative end of things. Like getting access to software, getting access to hardware is so easy. The barrier is so much lower, and that's one of the ways to begin. And then I think just creating a culture where creativity, if it's your kids, creating a culture in the home of being able to be creative is important. I think context is actually like the most important because that's what informs us later on. Like if I'm not living life, I can't make good music because there's no context to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah,
that's good. I respect that. I would say it's like a 2-answer question or 2 answers to that question. So number 1 is I would first just eat like as a chef, right? So if creativity for me, so I'm going to see it from my view. I get inspiration because I eat all the time, everywhere out, whenever I can. I'm eating different stuff, Filipino or not. I'm constantly eating things that aren't me, that I'm not making. And then that influences my creativity. Now, the larger lesson from that is ask, because a lot of people are so scared to just ask. So how do those two tie together? Well, if you're someone that likes to eat but can't afford it, and you want to be creative and you want to listen to me, just literally go there and ask for the chef or ask for whoever is in charge and say, hey, I'm a new up and coming cook. I'm a food blogger. I'm this, but I have nothing to offer. I just want to know, may I have a small little portion because I heard about it and it looks delicious. You would be you would be shocked to see how many people are going to give you a positive, great answer from that. Ask for a job, ask a question, ask to have a mentor. But most people just don't ask. Ask for the discount, ask for whatever it is, but no one asks. So just feel confident in asking. It's amazing how freeing it is.
The answer is always no if you don't ask.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Ask politely. All you gotta do is ask politely. Amazing how many things you can get from it.
Awesome. Okay, so this question might tip us over time, so I hope you guys can give us another minute or so. But the last question here is, there are a lot more Filipino parodies being released on social media around the Filipino mom or Filipino auntie. What are your thoughts on those parodies?
Sorry, I need this because my I need this one because my grandmother has done two things with me in my life. One thing during the pandemic for social media where it was alive and her and I cooked. The second thing we did was a cooking show that her and I did. Now, those two were great. It was awesome. She was all about it. She's never asked me to do another one, but I don't think she would be angry if we did another one. But I'll tell you this, my family is not for your consumption. Oh. Period. Absolutely not. It is not to make you laugh at home. It's my family who I love and who I adore, who I'm going to go see on Thursday in Canada. I'm going to cook for them. I'm going to hug them. I'm going to love them. But they're not there so that you at home can laugh. That's how I feel. Now, that's how I personally feel. But I love that there are Filipino aunties and titas and lolas and moms and dads and nanais and whomever are out there, doing it because I think it's hilarious. And if they want to do it on their own volition, then more power to them, but not mine. That's how I feel.
It's like those memes can be cathartic for us who've experienced that. But watching someone from outside of our culture kind of laugh a little too hard is difficult because it's like you didn't experience the collective pain that we experienced from our titas. And so what are you laughing at? Because I think for us, we laugh out of the experience of both the good things and the hardships of being being Filipino. Whereas, somebody from outside the culture, and that's the thing too about and we didn't touch on this, but just your voice as somebody who's prominent, as a Filipino, or not even you don't have to be prominent to be conscious of, the impact that it has for others. Because I think it's like Jordan said, it's great that Filipino creators are creating. But there is that fine line that has to be towed. And so it's tough. And it's also tough for us to be like, you can and can't do that. It's within the Filipino community and as entertainers in the Filipino community, that's one of those things. I would rather find that person individually and be like, yo, let's talk. But that being said, I definitely find a certain level of catharsis, with those things.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you both for coming a little over time with us and for answering some of these really tough questions. So we appreciate your perspectives and definitely look forward to continuing to follow each of your blossoming careers and maybe continue some of these conversations with you personally. So thank you both for your time and have a good one. See ya.
Thanks, man. Also, the OG FGN.
Oh, hey.
Let's go.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
See ya.